What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to my channel. For today, we're going to be covering the famous case of Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni that's currently going on. If you are sleeping under a rock or you're probably unhoused, you have not heard about this. But for everyone else, we have been hearing about this non-stop. So just to give you guys a little bit of an intro, this famous case is dealing with the filming of the book-to-film adaptation, which is It Ends With Us, which is a book by Colleen Hoover that talks about domestic violence. It also talks about the resilience of the main character, Lily, who is played by Blake Lively. I have personally not seen the movie because I have the ad version of Netflix, and I didn't want to get a subscription upgrade, so I'm sorry, you guys. But I have also heard mixed reviews. Some people love the movie, some people feel like it was really a great representation of domestic violence, and other people were like, what the hell is this cheesy movie doing? I'm not gonna give a review of the movie, I'm gonna get into the case, but as you guys can probably tell from the title of the video, we are not interested in this video to say Team Blake or Team Justin. We're just interested in trying to understand what happened in this case. So for this video, I'm gonna walk you guys through a timeline of the events. I'm gonna walk you through the different allegations. Was Blake Lively sexually harassed? Did Justin Baldoni engage in a smear campaign against Blake Lively? And was it really just a power grab by Blake Lively and Reynolds? And then I'm going to talk about some other small little accusations, rumors that are floating around that we have to address. All right, so I'm going to take us all the way back to December of 2022, and that is when Blake Lively is casted as Lily for It Ends With Us. And as part of this casting, she negotiates an executive producer credit for herself. It isn't until May 2023 that they start production of the movie. And I also realized through my research that this was just a very quick turnaround for production. Like, it was a total of 3 months, which was broken apart. So in May of 2023 to mid-June, they filmed the first part of the movie. And then in January of 2024 to February 2024, they filmed the second half of the movie. And the reason why they broke it out into these two parts is because of the writer's strike that was happening, so they had to stop production during that period. Now, during that period that they stopped production, that is when Blake Lively had issued out her 17-point claims to Justin Baldoni and the General Wayfarer Group, which were her points that had to be reconciled before she was going to go back into film the next part of the movie. And this is infamously called the protections for return to production. In these claims, which we're going to get into in the later half of this video, she talks about like sexual harassment, unwarranted kissing, no intimacy coordinator, etc., etc. And then the general public, we don't hear anything about this case until we get into August, which is when the movie actually premieres. And before, during, and after the movie premiere, that's really when the public started to hear more and more about this movie. And really, it was in the form of negative press, specifically towards Blake Lively, because during the press tour of this movie, Blake Lively was also seemingly promoting her other businesses toward her hair care line and also her booze company. And also, when she was asked about domestic violence, she didn't really talk about it that much.
So if someone understands the themes of this movie, comes across you in public, and they want to really talk to you, what's the best way for them to be able to talk to you about this? How would you recommend they go about it?
Like asking for like my address or my phone number or like my location share? Or I could just location share you and then we could,
People just thought that was really tone deaf. We later find out that it was just the marketing plan that was put out by Sony, and Blake was following it along with the other cast members. What I find interesting about those claims or those attacks against Blake Lively is they're honestly also very cherry-picked. I watched a bunch of different interviews in preparation for this video, and I was like, oh, Blake Lively definitely did talk about domestic violence. She definitely talked about like Lily's character and the issues that she faced.
There's pain, there's tragedy, there's violence, there's trauma, there's sadness.
But there were definitely interviews, obviously, like that is her speaking, and those are interviews that are out there in the zeitgeist, which are true. Blake was also promoting other things. And then at the end of 2024 is when we get into the huge media frenzy of Blake Lively issuing her complaint, Justin Baldoni issuing his like countersuit, and also there is this famous article by the New York Times which supports Blake Lively's claims towards Justin Baldoni that he was engaging in this smear campaign. But as we know, Justin Baldoni has since countered this in his own lawsuit, which is a $400 million lawsuit, which I'm thinking Justin is probably like, let's do this lawsuit, let's win it, and let's film the sequel to the movie. All right, so let's get into the allegations that were made by Blake Lively towards Justin Baldoni, which were related to sexual harassment and also to weight shaming. The first claim has to do with allegations of weight shaming by Justin Baldoni. Now, Blake Lively claims that Justin Baldoni inquired about her weight, and also Ryan Reynolds seemingly like threw this whole fit/tantrum towards Justin Baldoni for asking their fitness trainer about his wife's weight. Justin Baldoni's side, he basically claims that the reason why he asked about her weight was because he wanted to be able to train himself up to be able to carry her in one of the scenes, which the scene ends up getting removed from the film. And as part of this, Justin Baldoni asks the fitness trainer of Blake Lively/Ryan Reynolds what is an estimate of Blake's weight. Now, at that time that Ryan Reynolds was basically berating Justin Baldoni says that he was apologetic, that he accepted blame for what he had done, and he took accountability for offending Blake. From what I have personally seen regarding Justin Baldoni, I feel like he, as a director and actor in the movie, and also writer, etc., editor, the whole thing, honestly, he was pretty stretched thin from what it seems like. I don't think that he had time to be considering her weight and like trying to weight shame her just for the sake of doing so. There's also other text messages that he provides that shows that he actually was really supportive of how she was feeling about her body because she had just had her 4th child, so she wasn't super comfortable with the way she looked just yet, and she was about to film this movie. And also in her own text messages that are in Justin's court case, she says like, no, I actually take great pride in trying to prepare myself for this kind of a film. I see it as like kind of an athletic event, so I know the image that has to be part of that. So she seemingly understands the requirements for the film and just kind of getting herself to have a more athletic build. The other claim by Blake is that the cast, including Justin Baldoni and other Wayfair producers, entered her changing room while she was topless or nude. Justin Baldoni counters this by saying that they didn't enter her room necessarily while she was in the nude, that she had actually invited them to enter when she was breastfeeding, and he shows the text message exchange of Blake Lively saying like, hey, I'm just pumping, you can come in and we can run lines together. And according to Justin, it seemed as though that was kind of the nature of what Blake was comfortable with. She was okay to have other guests inside of her room when she was pumping, and that nobody necessarily intrusively entered. There is a claim that one of the executives of Wayfair, Jamie Heath, was in the room and he like caught a glimpse of Blake Lively and she called him out. Justin Baldoni mentions in his case that Jamie Heath apologized to Blake Lively for having looked, but he said that he honestly didn't look. Maybe it was like a quick glance, but he didn't intend to like look at her while she was changing or she was breastfeeding. Now we're going to talk about the question of the intimacy coordinator. So this is where we start to get into a little bit of a gray area regarding Blake's claims. So according to Justin Baldoni's case, there was an intimacy coordinator present for the movie, but they were not specifically present during the filming of the movie. They were just part of the general pre-production process of choreographing, obviously, the sex and intimacy scenes. There is a text exchange between Justin to Blake, letting her know that, hey, we have an intimacy coordinator, like, would you like to meet with this person? And this happens like before these allegations, before even the filming, and Blake says like, no, I'm okay. And Justin claims that this put him in kind of an uncomfortable position because he was meeting with the intimacy coordinator and like getting notes and then having to go tell Blake like, hey, like this is the sex scene that this coordinator had told us we have to do and this is how we have to film it. He also says that Ryan Reynolds was present during those conversations generally. What I also find interesting about this on a complete different tangent is that a lot of these meetings are being held in Blake Lively's home. Like Justin is going to her home to run like some scenes, to edit some lines with her. Also, like the wardrobe team goes to Blake Lively's home in order to do fittings for her clothing. So I'm like, is Blake Lively just super comfortable opening her home, or is she just like super lazy? Like I wasn't able to figure out like what is going on here. Like why isn't she just going down to the studio like the rest of the cast? The other question mark / gray area has to do with her claims of sexual harassment, specifically relating to improvised kissing / touching. Now, the reason why I think this is a little bit of a gray area is because there is released footage that Justin's team has put out since this case obviously has been in the media, which is a scene in which Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni were slow dancing. And according to Blake Lively's lawsuit, this is where Justin Baldoni had kind of whispered in her ear and told her like, it smells so good.
Let's score another.
I'm not getting beard on you today.
I'm probably getting spray tan on you.
It smells good.
Well, it's not that. It's my body makeup.
They're obviously supposed to be filming like some B-roll footage. It's supposed to be silent, but in the filming of this, there's like some conversation that's going on. So they're like kind of in the motion of like they're not kissing, but they're like kind of teasing the kiss. Now, I feel like the internet has already had mixed reviews about this, but I think it definitely is swaying more on Justin's side. I think what I find to be true about this video is that Blake Lively does seem uncomfortable while she is filming this scene. And the reason why I say this is because she is insisting on talking from what it seems like is she's trying to remove the intimacy part of the scene, even though that's exactly what is being filmed. And I can't help but to just notice that she does seem uncomfortable. But I also think that it's kind of both of them that seem uncomfortable. It's like we have to consider that for actors, when they film sex scenes, intimacy scenes, it's like they've just met probably like that month and they're meeting specifically to do their acting job. So I can see them both kind of being in a little bit of an awkward position. But what I can also see is that Justin is acting professionally. Like once the camera cuts, he's giving instruction to the crew that's behind the camera.
All right, cut. I think we got plenty.
Yes.
Slow motion. It's gonna
Filming this scene. So it doesn't seem as though he's like lingering and like super enjoying this. It seems like he's honestly just acting. And I think we have to consider that as a general thing too, is that yes, I think that there's an importance for having intimacy coordinators present, especially for the actors just to feel a little bit more protected. But also we have to consider that acting does require improvisation to some degree. Not every single thing is going to be coordinated. That's ultimately why they're being hired for the project, is they are supposed to be providing like kind of their experience and expertise so that we can watch a movie and enjoy the movie and think like, oh, these two people are like really in love. The other thing that I also just want to preface is that I actually also do believe Blake Lively that she probably did feel like she was being sexually harassed at some point in the filming of this movie. Whether or not it came from like those improvised kissing and touching scenes, I'm not sure. But it does seem to me like that is probably something that could be true for her. And the reason why I say this is because those 17 points that were shared with the Wayfarer team were shared in November 2023. And then this like infamous New York Times article was done in December of 2024. So unless Blake Lively is this like super calculated, coordinated person of like, oh, I'm gonna make sure to like smear his name 1 year after I share these allegations, then to me, it's like she probably did experience those things. The other thing is that her husband also vouched for her and also berated Justin Baldoni. I'm not saying that that was justified, but I also think that to me proves that Ryan Reynolds was at least convinced that Blake Lively did endure those things. And I don't imagine that Blake Lively, again, is so calculated that even in her own home, even with her own husband, she's like, okay, let's engage in this like false claims of sexual harassment just so we can like get the rights to the movie. Like, I don't think that was necessarily the case. I think her husband was probably also trying to act in her best interest to some degree and was trying to support his wife. And I also want to say too, for Ryan Reynolds, I think for him, it was probably easy to hate on Justin Baldoni because he probably did feel somewhat threatened by seeing his wife on screen. There's an interview with the other love interest where Ryan Reynolds is like teasing Brandon.
Oh, God.
This is cool. It's not every day the husband gets to interview his wife's love interest in a film. It's kind of crazy.
I don't remember seeing this on the
Let's
schedule.
dive in, shall we?
And then like Ryan Reynolds' mother comes in, and then Hugh Jackman comes in, and they're like teasing this guy because he like plays the love interest of like his wife. And I feel like there's like some truth to that. Although it's a joke, it's like probably Ryan Reynolds felt a little bit insecure about his wife having this like love interest who also seemingly like really cares about like women's rights, and his wife probably also touts herself to be this feminist. So it's like he probably felt like a little bit threatened, and like it probably wasn't hard for him to, one, believe his wife, and then to stand up to his wife against this guy that he already feels like is maybe like weaponizing feminism for his own accord. All right, so now we're going to talk about the retaliation claims by Blake Lively / this smear campaign. So Blake Lively had provided information in the New York Times article and also obviously in her court case regarding a smear campaign that was enacted on her by Justin Baldoni. Now, the reason why she felt like this was a smear campaign was because obviously during the time of the premiere of the film, she was being attacked by different sources. Now, one of those sources is a famous journalist that interviews different celebrities, and She said herself that she was not part of any smear campaign, that she had went to go watch the movie, and then after the movie she was reminded about things that she hates about Hollywood, including Blake Lively and this interview that she had done like many years ago.
So congrats on your little bump.
Congrats on your little bump.
What about my bump?
You've got two nice ones.
Did you guys love wearing those kind of clothes that you...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, working in
Everyone
digital.
wants to talk about the clothes, but I wonder if they would ask the men about the clothes.
I would.
I love Jess.
So I decided to post the video. I did not know about the controversy around Blake Lively and the PR campaign for the film. I hadn't been following that at all. I just came back from a vacation.
So coincidentally, she shares this interview, and then fans start like picking out other like interviews of Blake Lively where she seems like she's like this kind of mean girl. I could understand that Blake probably genuinely felt like it was a smear campaign against her, because the coverage of Blake Lively and her being this mean girl, this bully, was very, very prevalent in the media during that time for at least like a month total. So for her to feel like, okay, maybe this is something that's done by Justin Baldoni is obviously, we find out, is pretty coincidental. But from her side, I can understand where she would get that idea that this was being done intentionally. Now, some of Blake's claims is that Justin's team engaged in astroturfing, which is basically when they use bots to plant negative stories against her. Now, I think, again, this is a gray area point for me, because there was a secondary team that was being used by Justin Baldoni's PR firm. But from what I gathered in Justin's case, they definitely did provide evidence that there weren't bots being used. What I also noticed in Justin's PR team's scenario planning document is that Blake Lively is being mentioned in that document. I think for them to make it seem as though like, oh no, our intention was purely just to highlight Justin and his initiatives for the film and domestic violence, and it was like purely done without any malice towards Blake Lively. I wouldn't say that that's completely true, but I also don't think that they were planting any evidence. Based on the correspondence that I saw, it was shown that Justin was saying, hey, like, we aren't using bots, right? Like, hey, we aren't planning these stories, right? He was trying to make sure that they weren't taking this approach. Also, from what I could see from Justin's PR team's communication, is that their overall idea was like never to be more aggressive than Blake Lively's claims that she might make to the public. So if she were to imply that there was some issue going on in production, like, then they would find kind of stories to highlight Justin. And if Blake were to come forward with any allegations towards Justin publicly, then they were gonna, you know, promote Justin as this kind of person, and they were also going to maybe like influence different stories about Blake that showed her in a negative light. And then there was like kind of the final tier, which was like, if Ryan Reynolds came out, then Justin was only going to be speaking about like domestic violence, and they weren't going to like really comment too much on the allegations. And what I'm trying to say is that with these like different tiers of the different approaches towards the scenarios, I think what is true is that obviously they're trying to highlight Justin and their client as a PR agency, but it is also true that they were going to, or were planning to, at least sway the media to also attack Blake to some degree. Now, again, I don't think that it was in the form of bots. I don't think it was in the form of planting stories, but I think influencing people, influencing different members of media. Obviously, we could see from like the PR team's communication that they have connections to TMZ, they have connections to People, they have connections to E! Like, they have those connections, and they also have the ability to suppress stories. It's not like it was just like this campaign to just boost Justin up. Right, so the last point has to do with Blake Lively's desire to gain control of production. Now, if you guys can remember what I mentioned in the timeline, that Blake Lively was giving an executive producer credit in the beginning during her negotiation, I think this is actually the most critical information when considering Blake Lively's actions, because although Justin Baldoni had never envisioned Blake Lively to be part of the production of the movie, he expected her just to be an actress, just to put her name as an executive producer so that they can then kind of get whatever marketing benefit from that. Blake Lively, I think she had another vision for herself. What I also think is interesting is that during that initial negotiation, Blake also requested to be listed as a producer of the film. Now, the main distinction between an executive producer and a producer is that executive producer sometimes is really just used as like a marketing tactic. Assigning Blake as an executive producer is used often kind of in the business to assist with the negotiation, to give her some credit, but then the studio also benefits because they have her name attached to the film. However, for a producer, producer, that is a little bit more of an in-depth role. From what I was able to read about the process to become a producer, Blake Lively asking to be a producer at the point where she gets hired for this film, to me kind of shows that she doesn't really have a clear understanding of what that entails, because she just categorically could not be considered to be a producer, because to be considered a producer, you're supposed to kind of fit 4 main criteria, which 2 of those things happen in like pre-production phase, which is like finding the actual material that's going to be filmed, working on like the script development before it's filmed, and like other pre-production activities. And she just categorically did not do those things by the time that she was asked to join the role. Funny enough, something that's mentioned in Justin Baldoni's case is that Blake Lively never read the book while she was in the movie. If Blake Lively didn't even read the book for the movie that she was acting in, that she wanted to basically direct, edit, etc., then what makes me think that she's gonna look up what a producer credit really means? As an executive producer, obviously she was vying for power. She felt like, because I asked for this thing, now I'm going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. And from looking at Blake Lively's work history, I can see that she was only listed as a producer for this film. Being an executive producer means for film and other projects is probably not what Blake Lively understood it to be. Now, Blake Lively gained control of first the wardrobe, and then she started trying to have a say in the writing. She tried to rewrite some of the scenes. We all know this popular story of Justin going to the apartment and then like being quote unquote ambushed by Ryan Reynolds and Taylor Swift, like saying like, oh, like her version of the rewriting of the Rooftop Team is so good, right? And then he like felt like he was forced to accept it. So that's what slowly started the process of like, okay, she's writing it. And then Justin Baldoni also outlined, once they were done filming the movie, like she was asking for the dailies, which basically meant like the raw footage of that day. And then she eventually cut her own version, and then she had that version approved by Sony. So she slowly like kind of weasels her way into like getting more and more control of the film. I can't fully blame her for wanting that. And I actually really am curious to see like what the contract specifies, because I think what's important for these kinds of distinctions is not necessarily only mentioning what this actor is going to do, but also what this actor does not have authority to do. So I think if Blake Lively had a better understanding of what that credit meant, I don't think she would have had this struggle for power. But for her, she probably felt like, I signed on to do this project, they told me I was going to be an executive producer, and they're trying to stop me from doing so. Like now I'm just gonna be like unapologetic about my desire to get control of this film and, you know, just steamroll Justin and steamroll like the Wayfarer team. But I also get it from Justin's perspective. He initially bought the rights to the film years ago, and he had worked with Colleen Hoover on developing it. He wanted to make sure that it was a story that was told correctly. His production company is the one that obviously bought the rights to the film. And so for him, he's like, I envision for myself to direct it, to edit it, to be part of the process. And so I also understand his side, is that this was supposed to be a career highlight for him as well. I think Blake, with the help of Ryan Reynolds, who famously also took control of like the Deadpool movie / franchise, probably saw this as an opportunity for herself to really be able to distinguish herself in film and maybe even like win awards. In Justin Baldoni's lawsuit, he also mentions that Blake then asked for a like very coveted PGA credit, which was credited for producers who were like very deeply involved in a film. This is also a credit that I see that Ryan Reynolds has for like the Deadpool films, which also one of them came out the same year as It Ends With Us. Now, really quickly, let's get into just some additional rumors about this case. People are saying online that these two had an affair and that like, oh, like why was he like up in her apartment and stuff. I also found that really interesting when I read that in Justin Baldoni's case, is that they were up till late night hours in Blake Lively's apartment, laughing hysterically and working on the film. And I thought that's kind of weird. It is weird, honestly. But I think from watching the footage that has recently come out with Justin and Blake dancing, I was like, okay, there's no sexual chemistry here between them. Honestly, what I think this is it's really just probably Blake genuinely feeling like she was being discredited in her role, and then having to do scenes with Justin Baldoni when he's kissing her and there's improvised kissing. She just does not like it. Even if we are watching and we're like, objectively, it does not seem as though it is sexual harassment, but it could very well be something that she herself is feeling. The other question is like why the cast followed Blake. I think a lot of people are saying that the cast did this because they wanted to see themselves part of the sequel, that Colleen Hoover was hoping that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds were able to acquire the rights to the book and then were able to like finish out the franchise. So that makes sense to me that people would ally themselves to Blake. And also it's like if you hear of a case of sexual harassment, sexual assault, you're gonna be like, wait, yeah, like I want to like listen to what you have to say. I want to make sure that you are being heard. It doesn't surprise me that the team is going to be supportive of her. But I think what everyone should try to practice too is just having a little bit of objectiveness, allowing the story to breathe so that we can then form our opinion based off of evidence. And what we were able to see from Justin's documents is that Blake did misconstrue the information, but I also think that it was coming from somewhat of a real place. Anyways, I want to hear what you guys think about this case. Are you guys in agreement with me? What do you guys think? I feel like everybody is Team Blake, Team Justin. I don't mind if you guys are on one side or the other, but I just want us to be able to talk about these things and kind of have a more objective approach to analyzing this. So I'm going to keep covering this case as more and more information comes out, but I would really love to hear your guys' opinions on this. Thank you guys so much, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye!